table is cleared, Nia. You're done." The thud of the cardboard box hitting the dark wooden table echoed like a judge's gavel in a courtroom. The coffee cup trembled, liquid rippling over the rim. The air thickened, as if the entire room had been drained of oxygen. Leonard Drake, 63, silver hair neatly combed, harsh face unmoving, stared directly at Dr. Nia Carter, 42, CEO of Meridian Community Bank. He hadn't simply handed her the box, he had thrown it, as if discarding something worthless. Inside lay her Harvard MBA diploma, torn at one corner, family photos turned upside down, and the Executive of the Year trophy wrapped in toilet paper. A cruel mockery. Around the long table, 8 board members, all white men and women between 50 and 70, leaned back in their chairs, smirking with thinly veiled delight at seeing the black woman they had always deemed unfit sitting motionless. "Security will escort you out," Leonard said, his voice low but sharp as a blade, cutting straight through pride. In that moment, Nia felt every stare pierce her like knives. Years of study, effort, endless nights of work, all seemed shoved into the box before her. Yet her eyes held no tears, only a quiet, cold light, waiting for the right moment to ignite. On the laptop screen of Laila Nguyen, her 23-year-old assistant, a small red icon flashed, live stream active. The bank's internal Slack, nearly 850 employees, was watching in real time. Messages poured in from branches. What's happening? Are they humiliating our CEO? Nia knew, and she allowed it. She wanted everyone to see. Victoria Hale, 54, a veteran board member, laughed with disdain. Perhaps now we can finally find a leader who better fits our company culture. The words landed like a slap. Fits the culture, no explanation needed. Daniel Ortiz, 46, the newest member, frowned, glancing around at the smirks and complicit looks, his hands clenched tightly. Leonard checked his Rolex, the heirloom he often flaunted. "You have 30 minutes before security locks down the building. Use them." In Nia's mind, memories played like a fast reel. Her first day at Meridian, she had promised to learn the names of all 850 employees, and within a week, she did. She recalled Marcus Reed, head of security, moved to tears when she remembered his name. No CEO ever remembered us. She remembered fighting for frontline workers' raises, remembered handing out water herself on a scorching summer day to tellers working double shifts. She had believed that proving herself through results and dedication would dissolve prejudice. But 18 months and 23% profit growth was not enough, because in their eyes, she never belonged. Nia's hand brushed the leather briefcase at her feet, the glint of titanium edges catching the fluorescent light, the folder inside holding documents no one expected. She unlocked her phone, one contact labeled only AZ. 4 words typed. Code 7. Executor now. The message sent in an instant. Somewhere across the city, a current was shifting. Nia raised her head. Her voice was steady, every word precise. In Q4, our profits exceeded targets by 23%. So tell me, what's the real reason? Victoria smirked, her pearl necklace gleaming. Our clients need someone familiar, someone they can relate to, someone they can trust. Silence followed, broken only by nods of agreement. A chill ran down Daniel's spine. He knew they had gone too far. Slack notifications chimed relentlessly. The number climbed, 852, 861, 1247. On Twitter, the first screenshot appeared with a hashtag, Justice for Nia. In the hallway, Tiana Brooks, 25, a new analyst, trembled as she held her phone. She live-streamed on Instagram. Everyone, our CEO is being thrown out, and you're seeing it live. This is discrimination, live. Viewers surged, 3,400, 5,800, 8,200. Students from Howard, Spelman, Morehouse, where Nia had once spoken, began sharing. The fire spread across social media. Marcus Reed, 49, head of security, entered. His voice gravelly, he said, "Miss Carter, I need to escort you out." But his steps were heavy. He remembered how she gave his daughter an internship, how she had asked sincerely about his wife after surgery. Orders were orders, but his conscience trembled. Leonard slammed his hand on the table. "This is not a negotiation. You are terminated immediately." 2 guards entered, the room dropping into icy tension. Victoria smiled sweetly, victory glinting in her eyes like knives. "We've already contacted the press. The transition will be seamless. No need for concern." Nia's gaze locked on them, unblinking, unbowed. 10 more minutes, and the board would flip. Daniel Ortiz's hand slid under the table, sweat dampening his palms. He thought, "They're destroying the very bank they claim to protect." Marcus looked between Nia and Leonard, torn. To obey meant betraying his conscience. To resist meant betraying his duty. Leonard glanced again at his Rolex, seconds ticking coldly. In his arrogant mind, in the end, she's just a black woman who stepped into the wrong room. Nia placed her hand on the cardboard box. Her dark eyes swept the room, meeting each face, one by one. Leonard, Victoria, the rest. Then she smiled, not in submission, not as a mask, but with the calm certainty of someone holding the trump card. "You know what's interesting about traditional banking?" Nia's voice was low, deliberate. "They are built on one thing: trust." Lila's camera caught the exact moment. The live stream surged past, 15,000, then 20,000 viewers. A strange current filled the room, the warning of a coming storm. And as Leonard smugly believed he had won, another door, invisible but immensely powerful, was already opening. Nia remained seated at the boardroom table, the box of humiliation before her. But in her hands lay the ace no one saw coming. The real game was only beginning. No one in that room of power realized that beyond the dark wooden walls, a storm was already forming. On the Slack screen, the number of viewers kept climbing. 1247, 1600, 2000. Each rising digit was like a heartbeat pounding in Leonard Drake's chest, though he hid it behind a mask of cold indifference. Nia Carter sat in silence. She knew the real wave wasn't in the faces around the table. It was outside, in the hands of smartphones, capturing, streaming, multiplying every second. In the hallway, Tiana Brooks, the 25-year-old analyst with her curls tied back, held her phone with trembling hands, the screen glowing against eyes filled with fear and resolve. "This is live, everyone. Our CEO, Dr. Nia Carter, is being fired. They've given no reason except culture." Comments poured under the Instagram video. "My God, this is blatant racism. We're in 2025, not 1955. Justice for Nia. Share this now." In just 5 minutes, viewers skyrocketed. 3,400, 5,800, 8,200. Students from Howard, Spelman, Morehouse, places where Nia had once lectured on leadership in the new era, were sharing in unison. A social media wave was rising. Inside the boardroom, Marcus Reed, 49, head of security, stood frozen. He heard Leonard's order. "Marcus, get her out now! Don't waste more time!" His fists clenched, but his feet refused to move. In his mind, his daughter's voice replayed. "Dad, Dr. Carter called me. I got the internship. They said she personally chose me." Without Nia, his daughter's dream would have ended before it began. And now he was being told to throw out the very woman who had given his family hope, from the bank she had rebuilt. His conscience roared, Leonard's teeth clenched, his words sharp though quiet. You people always make everything about race. Sometimes you're simply not good enough. Period. The sentence dropped like a stone. The room grew heavier, but the live stream was still rolling. Lila Nguyen, the young assistant, glanced at the screen, her heartbeat racing. She knew every employee was hearing this, and thousands more outside. On Twitter, the hashtag #JusticeFonya erupted. In less than 10 minutes, it crossed 12,000 tweets. Short clips spread at lightning speed. Leonard, silver hair, arrogant face, uttering the words, "You're not good enough." That image, that line, would be the ruin of his career. Tiana, still filming in the hallway, steadied her voice. "This is proof. They're discriminating right inside the boardroom. Remember this name, Meridian Community Bank. This is where it's happening." Her viewer count surged. 12,000, 19,000, 28,000. Comments crashed like a storm. "Call the press now. Who's got a good lawyer?" This is a clear lawsuit. Black people are never safe, even when they're CEO. Within minutes, this was no longer internal. It had become a social issue. Victoria Hale, once smug, now struggled to breathe. Her phone buzzed non-stop. Messages from her daughter at Duke, from friends at the golf club, all asking the same thing. "Is it true? This is happening at your bank?" Daniel Ortiz glanced at Leonard, then at Nia. One question echoed in his mind. When this is exposed, whose side will history stand on? And Lila Nguyen, sitting quietly in the corner, sweat dripping down, realized she was the one who had accidentally turned on the live stream. But instead of regret, she felt a strange relief, as if truth was always meant to be seen. Nia set her phone on the table. A reply from AZ appeared. "ETA 2 minutes." She lifted her gaze, staring straight at Leonard. "Traditional banks are built on trust," she said, her voice low and steady, sharp beneath the calm. "But tell me, what happens when people stop believing?" Each word landed like nails on a coffin. Leonard scoffed, but his palms began to sweat. He glanced at his Rolex, but the ticking second hand no longer signaled power. It ticked like a countdown to the end. At that moment, Victoria's phone buzzed again. She looked down, her face drained. A message from an old friend. "This video is on Facebook. 43,000 views in just 2 minutes. Everyone has seen it." Just then, the boardroom doors opened. A young guard, Evan Cole, stepped in, whispering to Marcus Reed, "Sir, my phone's blowing up. My girlfriend at Howard just sent me this clip. It's everywhere now." Marcus looked at Nia. He saw the steel calm on her face, like a warrior waiting for reinforcements. On Lila's screen, the live viewer count soared. 47,000, 58,000, 73,000. The room was no longer a boardroom. It had become a public courtroom, and those who had once sneered, convinced of their control, were now unwilling actors under the harsh spotlight of tens of thousands of eyes. Nia smiled faintly, whispering to herself, "The power game is only just beginning." Outside, the storm of social media had become a Category 10 hurricane. Inside the sealed chamber, the balance of power shook violently, and in only minutes, the entire game would flip. The 12th floor boardroom of Meridian Community Bank was silent. The ticking of Leonard Drake's Rolex sounded like nails driven into a coffin. On the Slack screen, the number of viewers had surpassed 80,000. Outside, Tiana Brooks's live stream poured on like a waterfall. Nia Carter sat upright, her dark eyes blazing. Her phone vibrated softly on the table. Lobby level. Ready. She set it down calmly, as though it were an ordinary message. But in Leonard's chest, unease began to grow. Victoria Hale's eyes darted back and forth, her face pale, her fingers twisting the strand of pearls around her neck. She was used to controlling situations with polite smiles and handshakes at cocktail parties. But now every mask she wore was cracking. Daniel Ortiz glanced at Nia. In his eyes was a flicker of awe and fear. He knew she wasn't losing. She was waiting for her trump card. The chime of the elevator rang out. The doors opened. 8 figures in charcoal suits entered, their formation sharp, as if rehearsed 100 times. The hall light reflected off small badges on their briefcases. Ardent and Locke, LLP. Leading them was Aisha Munro, 44, hair in a tight bun, eyes sharp as polished steel. Her very presence shifted the air in the room. Known as a thunderbolt in federal court, Aisha carried a near-perfect winning record. "Good evening, board members," Aisha said, her voice cold, each word deliberate. "I am Aisha Munro, representing Dr. Nia Carter in a federal discrimination case against this very institution." Leonard jolted, as if splashed with ice water. "What case?" "This is an internal matter, a personnel decision." Aisha's lips curved faintly. "It's no longer internal, Mr. Drake." Nia calmly opened her leather case. The click of the lock was like a vault revealing its most dangerous secret. She drew out a titanium folder, the metal edges catching the light, sending cold reflections across the room. "This is complaint number 2025, Yelena 27, filed with the Federal Banking Commission, submitted 3 weeks ago," Nia said, placing it before Leonard. At Aisha's signal, Grant Ellison, 52, salt and pepper hair, stepped forward and handed thick binders to each board member. Nearly 50 pages of records, transcripts, meeting notes. Each page landed like a hammer blow on their dwindling confidence. Victoria flipped through, her hand trembling. On the page, in black and white, were clear statements. December 15th, 2024, 3:47 p.m. We need an image more in line with tradition. January 26th, 2025, 4:15 p.m. Clients expect cultural alignment. February 8th, 2025, 2:33 p.m. Certain leadership styles are not suited to our market. Every word, every period, now evidence. Priya Mehta, 32, the youngest lawyer, lifted her chin, her voice sharp. These so-called metaphors in legal terms are indirect racial and gender discrimination. And Georgia, ladies and gentlemen, is a one-party consent state. Every recording is admissible. The room froze. Daniel Ortiz bowed his head, his pulse pounding. He remembered every complicit glance, every smirk. Now there was no escape. Meanwhile, Tiana Brooks's live stream rolled on from the hallway. Viewership spiked. 92,000, 107,000, 124,000. Comments surged. She planned this all along. Brilliant. This is how you fight back. Remember her name, Nia Carter. On Twitter, Justice for Kalanaya climbed into the national top 3. One comment stood out. Never underestimate a black woman with evidence in hand. Leonard tried to steady his voice. This is fabricated. You staged all of this. There's no way in 3 weeks. Nia cut him off, her voice icy. 3 months, Mr. Drake. I started recording the night you told me I didn't fit the culture at the Christmas party. You don't remember? Leonard's face shifted from red to pale. The Rolex on his wrist felt like lead. Victoria trembled visibly. No. This can't be legal. Robert Hahn, 61, silver-haired attorney, stepped forward, voice calm. Georgia Code, Section 16, 1162. One party's consent is sufficient, entirely lawful. No loopholes. Marcus Reed swallowed hard, his admiration for Nia unhidden. The security team exchanged uncertain glances. They had come to escort a dismissed woman, yet now stood before a legal warrior with an army behind her. Daniel Ortiz inhaled deeply, whispering, "We judged her wrong. Completely wrong." Nia turned, her voice low but resonant, as if addressing not just the room, but the thousands watching live. "You thought I was a lone woman, easily removed. But I prepared. And I didn't just prepare for myself. I prepared for everyone who has ever been treated as I was." Aisha Monroe pressed her hand on the table, her tone like a funeral bell. Meridian Community Bank is now facing 8 federal charges, from Title VII of the Civil Rights Act to ECOA to whistleblower retaliation. Non-compliance will mean suspension of license, collapse within 90 days. The temperature dropped. The once powerful now looked like puppets with their strings cut. Outside, Tiana Brooks whispered into her phone, "Everyone, they've revealed the evidence. This isn't about firing anymore. This is a federal battle." Viewership soared, 150,000 live. All of America was watching. Nia smiled faintly, her eyes burning bright. "This game I planned every move, and now it's time to declare checkmate." The arrival of Ardent & Locke LLP had transformed the boardroom from a chamber of humiliation into a public courtroom. The next step, the full-scale legal battle, was about to begin. The boardroom was silent. No more mocking laughter, no more sneering glances. Only the sound of trembling pages and shallow breaths. The charges lay on the table like stones pressing down on the chests of every board member. Nia Carter sat with arms folded, steady as though she were the judge presiding here. Her gaze swept across each face, from Leonard Drake, his aging features now pale, to Victoria Hale, lips trembling, arrogance gone. Aisha Monroe stood firm, her voice sharp as ice. "We are not here to debate. We are here to deliver a choice. You have 72 hours, 2 paths. One is compliance, the other is destruction. The first option, full compliance." Grant Ellison, 52, opened a second briefcase, pulling out binders stamped with the seal of the Federal Banking Commission. He distributed them, his tone deliberate, like reading charges in court. Option 1. The entire bank submits to a federal settlement framework. Specifically, Dr. Carter is immediately reinstated with expanded authority and a 3-year protection contract. $2.3 million is redirected into a fund for financial education programs in underserved communities. All staff from management down are required to attend unconscious bias training each quarter for 2 years. And finally, the board must restructure to include at least 40% minority members within 6 months. Each demand landed like a blade, cutting deeper into the pride of the board. Victoria gasped. "This is revolution. You intend to turn this board into a classroom?" Priya Mehta, the young attorney, answered clearly, "Not revolution. Justice. This is mandatory restructuring if Meridian is to survive. The second option, the path of destruction." Aisha raised a single finger, her eyes blazing. Option 2, refuse compliance. That means facing federal court. She paused, letting the weight of her words compress the room like a ticking bomb. "In that case, we will subpoena every email, message, and financial record from the past 5 years. Every meeting, every whisper, every act of bias will be exposed. The media will be present. The press will dissect every detail. And I promise you, this bank will be placed under a microscope until every grain of dust is revealed." Robert Hahn, the silver-haired lawyer, stepped in, his voice deep and grim. "Additionally, 67 employees are prepared to join a class action over hostile workplace conditions. And the FDIC has already been notified to initiate a lending practices investigation. If Meridian loses its operating license, this bank collapses within 90 days. Leonard slammed his hand on the table, desperate. "This is extortion. You've staged this to destroy a reputable bank." Nia tilted her head, her voice soft but sharp as a blade. "Extortion? No, Leonard. This is truth. I sit here, humiliated, dismissed not for competence, but for the color of my skin and my gender. The people outside can see it. 150,000 are watching. This truth cannot be erased." Victoria stammered. "But this bank has stood for 70 years. It can't be destroyed over one lawsuit." Aisha cut her off, her voice striking like a gavel. "This is not one lawsuit. This is a federal case. Once the license is suspended, 70 years or 700 means nothing." As fear thickened the air inside, outside, Tiana Brooks's live stream crossed 180,000 viewers. The hashtags Justicefornia and Meridian Meltdown climbed to number 2 nationwide. A Howard student wrote, "This is a historic lesson in the power of social media." On Facebook, the clip of Leonard uttering the racist phrase, "You're not good enough," had reached over 2 million views in just 20 minutes. CNN, Bloomberg, The Washington Post all broke the headline, "Black Bank CEO fired, federal lawsuit erupts in the boardroom." The wall of protection around the board was shattered. The nation was watching. Daniel Ortiz sat silently, clutching the binder. He knew he was a living witness, having heard and seen every coded phrase for months. Within him rose a conflicted feeling, fear of implication, yet relief that truth was finally laid bare. Marcus Reed stood motionless, heart pounding. He remembered his daughter's gratitude, remembered Nia's kindness. He thought, if she wins, this victory is not only hers, but for people like me, people dismissed and pushed aside. Leonard, by contrast, was unraveling. Decades of power built like stone were dissolving like sand under waves. He could not bear the thought of being branded a bigot. But the more he resisted, the deeper he sank. Nia rose. For the first time since the meeting began, she left her chair. Instinctively, every head turned. She did not shout, did not slam the table. She simply stood. Yet in that stance, in those eyes, was the authority of a commander playing the decisive card. You think you have the power to bring me down. But you are wrong. I am the one deciding this game. You have 72 hours, only 72 to choose, either change or be crushed by history. The words fell, sharp as a blade, slicing through every excuse. Aisha snapped a binder shut, the sound echoing across the room. The choice is yours, option 1 or option 2. But remember, the entire nation is watching, and the federal government will not relent. No one spoke. Only the constant vibration of phones filled the silence, signaling frantic calls from the press, clients, and regulators. Nia glanced at the cardboard box that had been thrown down earlier and smiled faintly. Perhaps I should leave it here as a reminder. Every decision you make today will be written into history, not mine, but yours. Outside, the viewer count surged past 200,000. The game had completely reversed. The woman once humiliated now held the fate of an entire bank. The 72-hour ultimatum was set. The board faced 2 paths, compliance and transformation, or defiance and destruction. All of America awaited their answer. The next morning, sunlight streamed through the tall glass windows of Meridian Community Bank's headquarters, but instead of bringing life, It revealed the ruin in the minds of those who once thought themselves untouchable. In the emergency boardroom, Leonard Drake sat slumped, his expensive suit wrinkled, dark circles under his sleepless eyes. The Rolex that gleamed yesterday now felt like a burden, each tick of the second hand cutting into his pride like a knife. He drummed his fingers on the table, his voice hoarse. The Federal Reserve has called 6 times since last night. The FDIC wants the full lending portfolio. The Office of the Comptroller of the Currency has scheduled an emergency inspection for Tuesday. On the table lay stacks of envelopes from federal agencies, each marked with a red seal like a verdict. Victoria Hale, her face once perfectly made up, now looked worn and disheveled, her hair in disarray. She gripped her coffee cup, but her hands shook so badly the liquid spilled over the rim. My friends won't return my calls. My daughter at Duke is being hounded with questions. We've turned ourselves into a national disgrace. Daniel Ortiz sat in silence, sweat dripping from his brow. He knew he had witnessed everything, and his silence had become guilt. At the corner of the table, Williams, another board member, scrolled his phone, his voice breaking. Shares of the parent company are down another 8% in pre-market trading. Shareholders are demanding answers. We're dragging the entire group into the abyss. Leonard clenched his fists. He had never felt his power so fragile. His phone buzzed. The screen lit up. Tom Davidson, Davidson Construction, their largest client, holding over $4.2 million in deposits and a $2.8 million loan. Leonard reluctantly answered. "Hello, Tom, The voice on the other end was icy. "Leonard, we can't continue. My company has a zero-tolerance diversity policy. We cannot be tied to a bank facing federal discrimination charges. Monday, we're moving everything to Sunrust Bank." The line went dead. Leonard sat frozen, his lips trembling as if he had swallowed a blade. Within 2 hours, 3 more corporate clients called with the same message. "We're withdrawing." In total, more than $12.7 million in deposits was about to vanish. A newly hired attorney, Michael Reynolds, 58, entered the room. His voice was heavy. "I've reviewed the files from Ardent & Locke. They have everything. Lawful recordings, emails, meeting minutes. This federal case is solid. I have to be blunt. The chance of winning is nearly zero." Victoria cut in quickly, her voice desperate. There must be a way to block the evidence. "Claim it's fake? A setup?" Reynolds shook his head. "Georgia is a one-party consent state. Every recording is legal. And Ardent & Locke has never lost a banking discrimination case. Their win rate in federal court is 93%. You are facing a true storm." The room sank into deadly silence. On the large screen, CNN aired a special report. Black CEO fired federal government, steps in, Meridian Bank in crisis. Bloomberg flashed, Southeastern Financial Group stock plummets, shareholders demand answers. The Washington Post headlined, Discrimination in the Boardroom Lessons from the Nia Carter case. Outside the headquarters, dozens of reporters set up cameras, microphones raised. On the street, 200 protesters held signs, "Justice for Dr. Carter" and "Banking while black is not a crime." Their chants rose, echoing against the glass towers. Leonard buried his face in his hands, palms slick with sweat. He knew the bank had lost more than customers. It had lost the trust of the community. Victoria was on the verge of tears. "We're going to lose everything. Assets, careers, reputations. I will not go to prison because of you, Leonard," Leonard shouted back. "Because of me? You were the one who pushed for cultural fit. You called that meeting. The boardroom exploded into a frenzy of accusations. 18 months of collusion now collapsed into a battle for individual survival. Everyone was scrambling to save themselves. Daniel rose abruptly, his voice trembling but firm. We can't go on like this. The only solution is to accept option 1. If not, the bank will die, and we'll die with it. Michael Reynolds slammed his pen on the table. He's right. You have 41 hours left. If you don't respond within the deadline, Ardent and Locke will submit all evidence to the court, and the federal government will file charges. At that point, there will be no negotiation. A suffocating silence fell. All eyes turned to Leonard. Outside the glass, the crowd chanted, "Justice for Noor! Justice for Noor!" The roar reverberated through the windows, seeping into the hearts of those who once believed they were untouchable. Leonard sat still, staring at the cardboard box still on the shelf, the same box he had used to humiliate Nia Carter. The withered plant inside was now completely dead, a symbol of his decayed power. He whispered, his voice breaking, Can we still be saved?" But no one answered. The question lingered, heavy and unrelenting, because they all knew salvation was no longer in their hands. Outside, cameras panned across the protesters and their signs. In the rising chants, one truth was undeniable. The age of silence was over. The Meridian board was trapped in the whirlwind of media, abandoned by clients, and under federal siege. The 72-hour ultimatum had begun to bear its weight, and ahead, a decision of survival loomed. The emergency boardroom on Saturday noon was suffocating, thick like a chamber filled with toxic gas. It was no longer a space for strategy, but a makeshift courtroom where every board member faced the ghosts of their own actions. Outside, the chants of protesters shook the glass walls. Justice for Nia! Justice for Nia! Inside, Leonard Drake sat rigid, his eyes vacant. Once the man who dictated every decision of the bank, the so-called keeper of tradition, he now looked like a condemned prisoner awaiting his sentence. Victoria Hale fidgeted, her voice trembling. "I can't go to prison, Leonard. I have a family, grandchildren. If we choose option 2, everything will be dragged into federal court. The media will crush us." Williams slammed his hand on the table. "Shareholders have lost tens of millions in just 24 hours. If we don't choose option 1, we are finished." Daniel Ortiz, the only one still holding on to composure, spoke slowly but firmly. "This is no longer a matter of choice. It is survival. I cast my vote for option 1. The room erupted in whispers. Those who once stood united were fracturing, each now clinging to their own survival. Leonard roared, veins bulging on his forehead. "Have you forgotten? This is our bank, 70 years of building. We cannot bow to a filthy scheme that's been staged." Victoria fired back instantly, her eyes bloodshot. "A scheme? While the entire country is watching the video of you telling Nia she wasn't good enough because of her skin color? You think federal court will believe your denials? Stop lying to yourself, Leonard." The atmosphere exploded. Chairs screeched, breaths quickened. An employee burst in, pale-faced. "Sir, Live Television is reporting on this meeting. Reporters have set up cameras in the lobby. The live stream outside has passed 500,000 viewers." The room froze. Every move they made was now a public performance. There were no shadows left to hide in. From the corner, Marcus Reed, head of security, stepped forward. His voice was low, steady, each word weighted. "I've worked here 12 years. I once believed Meridian was a place of trust. But what I have seen is not trust. It's exclusion. It's humiliation. And if I must choose a side, I will stand with justice." His words fell not as an order, but as a moral verdict. The board staggered. Leonard slammed his fist on the table, his Rolex rattling. "You are betraying me. If we choose option 1, we slit our own throats. We hand this bank to her." Daniel answered without hesitation, his voice resolute. "No, Leonard. We are saving this bank from you." Victoria collapsed into her chair, clutching her head. "I vote for option 1. Williams raised his hand slowly. "So do I." One by one, hands followed. Resistance crumbled, replaced by the truth. Fear of the law outweighed the pride of power. Every eye turned to Leonard. He was the last to vote. The room held its breath. Outside, the crowd roared. Inside, the second hand ticked like a drumbeat on their chests. Leonard's eyes drifted to the cardboard box on the shelf, the same box he had used to humiliate Nia. The plant inside was dead, its leaves curled and dry. He realized it wasn't the plant that had died, but his own career. His lips moved, his voice broken. I agree. Option 1. The room exhaled, but no one rejoiced. The decision was not a victory. It was surrender to undeniable truth. Michael Reynolds immediately scribbled into his notes. "I'll contact Ardent and Locke. We will accept all terms." Another staff member rushed in, panicked. Breaking news on Bloomberg. Meridian Board accepts full restructuring after federal ultimatum. The parent company's stock has halted trading due to extreme volatility. CNN's headline scrolled, "Victory for Justice. Black CEO reinstated after banking discrimination crisis." Outside, hundreds of protesters cheered. But inside there was no celebration, only hollow faces, knowing their careers were over. Leonard rose unsteadily, as if aged a decade in moments. He looked around the table, saw his former allies avert their eyes. In that instant, he understood. He had lost everything: power, reputation, even the fear he once commanded. Beyond the door, chants thundered, "Nia Carter! Nia Carter!" And in the boardroom, those who once mocked her now sat with bowed heads. The ultimatum had ended. Power belonged to the woman they once dismissed. The board was forced to vote for option 1. Authority shifted completely, and ahead lay the triumphant return of Nia Carter. Monday morning, 8:58. The glass doors of Meridian Community Bank's headquarters opened, and Dr. Nia Carter walked in. She wore a navy blue suit, the crisp white collar glowing under the sunlight, her steps slow, yet commanding. Each step echoed through the space, not just into the bank, but into her own history. In the lobby, Marcus Reed, head of security, stood at attention. No trace of hesitation like the Friday before. He placed a hand on his chest, bowed his head slightly, and said, "Welcome back, Dr. Carter." Nia gave a faint smile. It was not a smile of pride, but of recognition that amid the storm, there were still those who chose the right side. Around her, employees paused. Some clapped softly, some nodded, their eyes lit with respect. They looked at Nia not only as a CEO, but as a symbol of resilience. In the distance, Tiana Brooks held her phone. But this time, she was not live streaming to expose injustice. She was recording to preserve history, the moment when a woman once humiliated walked back in as the victor. Nia entered the elevator and pressed 12. This was the very corridor where she had once been forced out in disgrace. But today, every step across the dark carpet beat like a triumphant drum. The doors opened. The grand boardroom, once a chamber of contempt, was about to become a stage for a public apology. At 2 in the afternoon, dozens of reporters filled the hall. Cameras, microphones, and flashes blazed. Behind the table, 7 board members sat stiff, their faces hollow. No smiles, no arrogance. At the center, Leonard Drake adjusted the microphone. His voice was hoarse, shaking, stripped of authority. On behalf of the Board of Directors of Meridian Community Bank, I offer a public apology to Dr. Nia Carter. We acknowledge that our actions and words violated professional ethics and created a discriminatory and hostile environment. Such behavior is unacceptable under any circumstances. He paused, his throat tight. Flashes lit his face, catching the sweat dripping down his temple. Leonard continued, his voice breaking. Dr. Carter is a leader who delivered 23% profit growth, expanded community credit programs, and built financial education initiatives. Her dismissal was not about competence, but about prejudice. I take personal responsibility for the words and actions that insulted her. The words I take responsibility fell dry, each syllable aging him another decade. Behind him, Victoria Hale lowered her head, hands clenched, unable to meet the cameras. The press surged. A CNN reporter asked, "Mr. Drake, do you admit that the phrase, 'not culturally fitting,' was in fact racial discrimination?" Leonard froze, but the weight of the moment forced him to nod. "Yes, I admit it." That answer exploded across Twitter. Board CEO admits to racial discrimination publicly. The hashtag Justice for Nia shot to #1 nationwide. Throughout the press conference, Nia Carter sat silently, never needing to interrupt. She let the man who once humiliated her bury himself in his own confession. Yet in her eyes, there was no revenge, only calm, the calm of someone who triumphed with truth and justice, not retaliation. When Leonard finished reading, the flashes still flickered, but all lenses turned to Nia. She rose. Her voice was low, steady, not raised, but every word struck deep. "I return not only for myself. I return for all who were ever told they did not fit, for all who were treated as outsiders in the very places they gave their labor." She paused, eyes locking onto the cameras. Justice is not a gift given to us. It is a right we must claim. And when justice arrives, it does not change just one person, it changes an entire system. The room erupted with applause. Not from the board, but from employees and those who had quietly watched outside the door. Leonard bowed his head, each word cutting him deeper. He realized the very power he used to humiliate Nia had now become the evidence of his own downfall. Victoria swallowed hard, remembering the questioning eyes of her daughter. She knew her social and political career was over. Marcus stood in the back of the hall, eyes blurred with tears. He remembered his hesitation on Friday and told himself he was lucky to have chosen the right side. Nia closed her speech with a short, thunderous sentence. "Justice is never late, as long as we have the courage to demand it." The hall went silent for a breath, then erupted in thunderous applause. Cameras captured Nia standing tall, while behind her, the very people who once mocked her now sat in shame. Outside, the crowd roared, "Nia Carter! Justice won!" In that moment, the world witnessed a complete reversal. The woman once cast out of her own bank had returned, not only to reclaim her position, but as an enduring symbol of justice and change. Nia Carter was officially back in the spotlight, while the board bowed their heads in public apology. Ahead lay a sweeping reform of the bank, beginning with this historic reckoning. 3 months after the Black Friday, Meridian Community Bank was no longer a name mocked in the press. It had become something else, a story of rebirth. In an interview with Harvard Business Review, Dr. Nia Carter spoke slowly but firmly. We did not just comply with the law. We chose to go further, to prove that a bank can be a tool of fairness, not a barrier. The moment she returned, Nia signed a wave of reform orders. Every quarter, all employees, from managers to new hires, attended unconscious bias training. These were not token classes, but real-world programs with case studies, open discussions, and guest speakers who were social experts and community activists. An equity committee was established, led by Marcus Reed, the head of security who had stood silently in that boardroom on that fateful day, now serving as vice chair. Their mission: to oversee all personnel decisions and report directly to the federal government. Diversity metrics were published publicly every month, so the community could see how Meridian was changing. When the first report was released, one anonymous employee wrote in the feedback system, "For the first time, I feel my voice matters. I no longer have to hide my skin color, my accent, or my beliefs." In just 12 weeks, the results exceeded all expectations. The diversity of the workforce rose by 37%. The approval rate of loans for minority clients surpassed industry standards, not because of lowered benchmarks, but because invisible biases were removed. Customers deposited an additional $42 million, many from communities that once turned their backs on Meridian. The story spread. Meridian, the bank that once discriminated against its own CEO, is now a model for financial equity. The $2.3 million from the federal settlement was used by Nia to launch 3 initiatives. The school financial education program sent bank employees into high schools in struggling neighborhoods to teach students how to manage money, save, and borrow wisely. The Small Business Development Fund supported minority entrepreneurs with favorable loans and strategic mentorship. The third was a partnership with historically black colleges and universities, building scholarships and internships for black students entering finance. Leading these programs was none other than Tiana Brooks, the young analyst who had live-streamed that Friday. She was now the Director of Community Development. On local television, Tiana spoke emotionally. Dr. Carter turned a painful experience into an opportunity for the entire community. We are not just building a bank, we are building trust. Each evening, when she returned to her office, Nia glanced at the old cardboard box, still kept in the corner. The dead plant inside had been replaced with a pot of green bamboo. The shoots rose tall and fresh, a symbol of resilience. The memory of being humiliated before the entire board still stung, but instead of consuming her, it fueled her. They wanted me to fall. I turned that humiliation into the foundation for change. Federal law required board restructuring. Within 3 months, 4 seats were replaced with new faces. Dr. Amara Williams, former regional director of the NAACP, to oversee fair hiring practices. Marcus James, a community finance expert, as chair of the Equity Committee, and 2 other members from Latino and Asian communities. The atmosphere in meetings was transformed. No more snide remarks about cultural fit, no more contemptuous glances. In their place was listening, sometimes awkward, but genuine. Victoria Hale, one of the few who remained, sat quietly, carrying the scar of shame, each meeting like another punishment. But Nia did not seek revenge. She let justice speak, with federal oversight forcing them to change. CNN asked Nia in another interview, "Why did you choose to stay rather than leave and start again elsewhere?" Nia looked directly into the camera, her voice steady. "Because I believe the greatest change must happen in the very place where injustice existed. If I walked away, Meridian would remain the same. But if I stayed, It could become proof that fairness is not just an ideal, it can become reality. Her answer spread like wildfire. Headlines called Nia the icon of financial justice. Customers returned to the bank not only to deposit money, but to support a story. A 70-year-old black woman teared up as she opened a new account. I avoided this bank for 20 years. But today, I am here because I see hope. I want my grandchildren to know things can change. A young Latino man signed a loan contract to open a grocery store and told Marcus James, "They denied me 3 times before." Today I signed. Not because I am different, but because they finally see me as a customer like anyone else. At the end of quarter press conference, Nia stood before reporters with a new banner behind her. Meridian, the bank of trust and justice. She spoke calmly, but her voice carried weight. We are not perfect, but we chose transparency. We chose justice. And the numbers prove it. When you serve the community with respect, the community will return its trust tenfold. The room erupted in applause. Cameras flashed wildly. But more than the light, what spread was a feeling. Meridian had truly changed. 3 months after the ashes of discrimination and humiliation, Nia Carter had led Meridian into a rebirth as a bank of fairness, trusted by its community and watched by the entire nation. 6 months after the historic press conference, the glass tower of Meridian Community Bank had transformed beyond recognition. The air that once hung heavy with scorn and fear was now filled with energy and anticipation. Every hallway, every branch echoed with the same new message. Fairness is not a slogan, it is how we work. On an autumn morning, the Federal Banking Commission released a special inspection report. The results shook the financial industry. Meridian earned an outstanding rating under the Community Reinvestment Act, the highest level and a first in its history. Loan approval rates for minority clients surpassed the industry average, proving the bank was not only compliant, but leading reform. Employee satisfaction scores rose 46% compared to the previous year. A federal official stated, "Meridian was once a symbol of discrimination. Today, it stands as an example for the entire industry." This is a transformation of exemplary scale. Bloomberg called it the Meridian Miracle. The Wall Street Journal wrote, "1 year ago, Meridian was on the brink of collapse due to prejudice. Now it is praised by federal authorities as the standard for fairness and transparency." CNN Business aired a special feature, opening with a striking contrast from a humiliating cardboard box to a model bank, an unprecedented journey. Meridian's transformation triggered a domino effect. 17 other community banks announced they would adopt unconscious bias training modeled after Meridian. The American Bankers Association officially added bias training as a required standard for board certification. Finance schools began teaching Meridian as a case study in their curriculum, from discrimination to reform. A Harvard Business School professor commented, "This story is not just about banking. It is a lesson in how power shifts when truth is exposed and the community rises." Tiana Brooks, the young analyst who once live-streamed the truth, was now Vice President of Community Development. In a speech at Spelman College, she said with emotion, "That day, my hands shook so badly I nearly dropped my phone. But in that moment, I found my voice. And that voice opened the door to change for thousands." Marcus Reed, once the head of security, had become an internal symbol. He told new colleagues, "I once stood between orders and conscience. I chose conscience, and I have no regrets." Their stories became sources of inspiration across the financial services industry. In her new office, Dr. Nia Carter looked at the bamboo plant that had grown another shoot. Every time she saw it, she remembered the moment she was forced from her CEO seat, told to clear her desk with a humiliating box. Now that same box remained, but instead of a withered plant, it held living bamboo, green and resilient. One late afternoon, when asked by a reporter, "How do you feel when Meridian is now called a national standard?" Nia smiled, her eyes steady. "I did not fight to be called an icon. I fought so no one else would have to endure what I endured. If this story becomes the standard, then it is the victory of all of us." While Meridian flourished, those who plotted against Nia faded into the shadows. Leonard Drake completed 2 years of mandatory bias counseling. The press photographed him, leaving the courthouse quietly, stripped of his aura. Victoria Hale moved to live near her daughter, far from the media spotlight. Other members quietly resigned to escape public scrutiny. But history would not remember them as victims. History recorded them as the ones who chose wrong. The people of Atlanta began to trust Meridian again. Free financial literacy classes in schools were crowded with parents. Small businesses lined up for loan consultations. A Latino customer beamed as he signed the papers to open a bakery. They denied me 3 times before. Today, I was approved immediately. This is not just money. It is recognition that I am worthy. Meridian had become a place where countless small stories resonated into one collective voice of the community. One morning, as Nia entered the bank's lobby, employees broke into applause. It was not to honor a leader, but to honor a symbol, a woman who had turned pain into the flame of change. On Twitter, Meridian Model trended nationwide. Articles, debates, classroom notes all pointed to one truth: from humiliation to proof. Meridian is the answer that fairness can become the standard if someone dares to rise. In that moment, Nia Carter knew her journey did not end with the CEO's chair. It had only just begun the journey of turning fairness into a legacy for an entire generation. 6 to 12 months later, Meridian had become a national model. Nia Carter had not only restored her personal dignity, but set a new standard for the financial industry. Ahead awaited the national stage, where she would share this journey as a historic case study. 1 year after that fateful day, Washington, D.C., the Grand Hall of the National Banking Association, glowed under the lights. More than 2,000 financial leaders from across America filled the auditorium, waiting for the main figure, Dr. Nia Carter. On stage, the event's logo lit up: National Banking Convention, Equity and Transformation. Nia stepped out, the spotlight illuminating her face. It was no longer the face of a woman once humiliated before her board, but the face of a national symbol. She began, her voice deep, resonant. Exactly 1 year ago, I was asked to leave the very bank I led. Not because of competence, but because of prejudice. They told me I did not fit their culture. The hall was silent, hundreds of eyes fixed on her. But I came back, not just to reclaim a CEO's chair, but to turn what was once a symbol of discrimination into a symbol of fairness. And today, Meridian is no longer a shame. It has become a national model. Applause erupted, rolling through the hall. On the screen behind her, numbers appeared. Lending to minority-owned businesses rose by 340%. Homeownership in underserved communities increased by 23%. Minority customer satisfaction reached 94%, the highest in the bank's history. Parent company stock climbed 18% in the 6 months following reform. These are not just numbers, Nia emphasized. These are real lives. Families buying their first homes, entrepreneurs opening their first businesses, students gaining financial education from the classroom. A short video played. Maria Rodriguez, a Latina woman once denied a loan by Meridian, now running a restaurant with 12 employees. James Washington, a young black man, purchasing his first home and later becoming a realtor, helping dozens of other minority families. Tiana Brooks, now Vice President of Community Development, speaking to HBCU students. The moment I live-streamed, the truth changed my life. The hall stirred, many nodding, moved. Leonard Drake no longer sat at Meridian. After 24 months of mandatory buyers counseling, he quietly left the city, his name forever tied to collapse. Victoria Hale vanished from public life. When asked, her daughter simply said, "My mother chose silence." But the story no longer revolved around their downfall. It was about the rise of a new generation of leadership. Nia looked straight at the hall, her voice powerful and unwavering. I did not fight only for myself. I fought for everyone who ever walked into a boardroom and was treated as an outsider. I fought for those dismissed because of appearance, gender, or skin color. And I want to remind you, justice is not a luxury. It is a fundamental right. And when we dare to stand, it becomes the power to transform an entire system. The hall erupted in thunderous applause, a standing ovation lasting nearly 2 minutes. As Nia stepped off stage, her mind flickered back to the image of the cardboard box. The withered plant inside had long died. But in her current office, the bamboo thrived, growing strong new shoots. That is me, she thought, thrown into the dark, yet still reaching for the light. That evening, the hashtag From Discrimination to Transformation flooded Twitter. Thousands shared their own stories of being denied, dismissed, yet still rising. The press hailed Nia Carter as the woman rewriting the standards of justice in American banking. Meridian, once a symbol of prejudice, now stood as the gold standard for financial fairness. And the story closed, not with the shame of a boardroom humiliation, but with the image of a black woman standing before thousands of leaders, declaring her final words. Never remain silent in the face of injustice, because every time we raise our voices, we do not just change our own story, we rewrite the story of an entire generation. 1 year later, Nia Carter had not only reclaimed her role, but transformed her struggle into a torch that illuminated an entire industry. From the humiliation of a cardboard box to the glory of a national stage, her journey stood as proof that justice, once reclaimed, carries the power to change the world. And so the journey came to a close, from the humiliation of a cardboard box to the glory of a national stage. The story of Dr. Nia Carter reminds us that justice is not a privilege, but a right that must be claimed. If you have ever been dismissed or pushed aside, remember this: it only takes one person brave enough to rise, and the entire system will be forced to change.